Welcome and great to have you join us as we go off script with Sam Monk, Senior Leader of Equippers Church. Enjoy today's podcast.
Hi and welcome to Off Script with Sam Monk. We talk about what's worked, what hasn't, and leadership lessons. And my name is Jay. Great to have Sam here with us as well. And Sam, today we want to talk about what's helped you with respect to kind of leadership filters. But before I want to talk about filters, I like to talk about filter coffee. But and we talk about
Is
maybe
that good coffee?
Yeah, filter coffee is okay depending on where you live. I'm an espresso man myself, but that's maybe you can send him some comments and tell us what coffee you like. Mm-hmm. But filters we often associate with maybe lenses. We talk about filters on social media, but why don't you just really for 30 seconds give us a good definition of a filter for you in terms of a leadership filter?
Well, it's how you view the world, but it's also taking all the thoughts that you can think about and narrowing down on the things that are going to be beneficial. And there's many things that we can do. There's many things that we can be involved in. But what are the right things that are actually going to help us move forward in life? And so filtering those thoughts, even your thoughts, is really important. How many know in this world in this season, you can go off on many different tangents and you can be all over the place. And so even helping yourself navigating that means that you've got to put good filters in your life.
It's good. Because there's just so much content, There's so many things out there. And you've got to be able to distill it into some sort of cohesive, coherent kind of thought, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's the ability to narrow your focus as well. Yeah. So you're able to focus on not many things, but focus on the thing that really matters and is going to make a difference.
Good, yeah. So today we want to talk about 5 areas of focus or filters that you've used over the years to help, I guess, lead a significant church, significant movement. So why don't you start off by thinking about what are the 5? What's the first one that you want us to talk through?
Yeah, well, it's basically we're asking in a lot of places. We're asking questions of other people. We ask questions of what's going on in our environment. But I found it's really beneficial when you ask yourself questions. And I've got 5 questions I ask myself. I think there's a lot of things that we can focus on, a lot of things that we can do. But again, is it going to help us really move forward in the thing that God's called us to? And I like Psalm 131 where it talks about, the psalmist says, I do not concern myself with matters beyond my grasp. And he goes on and talks about how his soul is like that of a weaned child. And I think we need to sometimes wean ourselves off information so that we can focus on.
Great, that's good.
Focus on the thing that's really going to help us, again, move forward. And so I often ask myself questions, and the questions I ask myself, I start with this one, is what I'm involved in inspiring?
Yeah. In fact, the question you often ask, even people on staff or team, or, would you be led by yourself, or would you be inspired by your own leadership?
Yeah.
Like, would you be, even another question I think I can remember now, would you be part of your own team if you were leading a team? It's a really challenging question.
Yeah, well, it's got to be inspiring because if you're not inspired by it, the chances are other people aren't going to be inspired by it.
Yeah.
And, if you can't sell it to yourself, it's not worth selling it to anyone else. And so, is it inspiring? Is it something that you go, oh man, if we pulled this off, if God really moved in this area, that would be amazing. And I think, that then triggers motivation, that releases the energy you need for the season that you're in. And asking yourself, am I inspired by this? Or is this just keeping things running?
Yeah, is it management, or are we just managing things and keeping things in boxes and doing the same things we do every other?
Yeah, because most people go, I don't like the management side of things. There's management to life, and we need to have those things in place, but ultimately what gets us up in the morning is the inspirational side of what we're doing. Are we making a difference?
Yeah, because people want to be part of something inspirational. They don't want to be, they don't want to just, I don't know, maybe be wasting life and just just rolling over the same year like we did last year. We'll get the same things, but there's something about being inspirational that actually, it's what gets you up in the morning. It's visionary. It's inspiring.
Well, it's the question we're going to ask: do we carry a dream that's worth following?
Right. A great question.
Yeah. Is it worth following? Does it captivate? Is it going to captivate the attention of others? But the first person you need to ask is that too. Is it yourself? Does this captivate something in my heart? Does it, get my attention to a place where, I'm dreaming about it, I'm meditating about it, I'm strategizing? And so the first question I ask myself is it inspirational? And then that leads to the second question, is it sustainable? Because we can find something that's inspirational that sometimes is just totally ridiculous, in that, we're hoping for something to take place, but it's so far removed from our reality that we're not even taking a single step towards it.
Right.
And so the question...
Is that because the inspirational thing is sometimes so big? Like the sustainability talks about playing the long game, eh? Like we're taking a long-term approach. This is like life's work type stuff, eh?
Yeah, it's not just inspirational in a moment.
Yeah,
it's like people get New Year's.
I'm inspired this year for a few months, and then I'm all of a sudden back to normal again.
Yeah, back to normal is like, how sustainable is this? Can this actually last a whole calendar year?
Yeah.
Can I put in place the disciplines that are needed to actually?
So you mentioned just because what are those building blocks of sustainability? Then you talked about discipline, but what are the things that continue to make sure that this thing actually endures throughout? Throughout different seasons. Like it's got to be worked in every season, right? It's got to be worked through. And
I think it's also in terms of recognizing what season you're in.
Right.
Because there's a time where you got to work hard.
Yeah.
And, you got to make hay while the sun shines, or you got to strike the iron while it's hot. And there's times where if you're going to get anything off the ground, you've got to really give your attention and your focus to it. And I think, in today's world, we talk about balance a lot. But, I think that needs to be filtered through seasons and what season you're in. When it's haymaking season for a farmer, it's like if they don't make hay...
Not a lot of balance, eh? You got to get it done, eh?
You got to get it done. Yeah. And I think there's, in leadership, there's things that you need to do in certain times. And if you don't do it in that time, it's like you're creating more work for yourself down the line. And so often people don't... look at time management through the lens or through the filter of what season you're in.
That's great.
And I found it really beneficial, even navigating this with Kathy, it's just, hey, this is the season we're in and there's a purpose to this season. But, this will actually lead us into being in another season. And where we might have gone hard in this season, it means that we can actually focus on some other things in the next season. And I think, is it sustainable? Is this pace sustainable? Because you don't want to be making hay all the time.
But that's a great point, because the argument can be, well, you can't just work people to death. Like we're not just, so there is, in fact, another way you often phrase it is, I really believe there's a window of opportunity is another way you describe these things sometimes. There's a window here, and actually I know that over the years we've made decisions, either, planning campuses and things, and I remember at the time you've said things like, oh God, not now, not this year, surely.
Yeah.
But you've known that actually, this is a season thing. It's not going to be forever.
Yeah.
But we've pushed, and there's a significant campus there now. So
yeah. And what are the seasons to really push and stretch? Because we don't really grow or move forward without a level of stretch. And then what's the season where we can actually pull back? If you keep on stretching a rubber band,
right? Yeah,
you stretch. Eventually, it's going to snap.
Yeah. And
I think the art of leadership is to recognize, okay, we've stretched.
Yeah.
Now we need the back end to catch up.
Yeah. Good.
And so you move forward a little bit like a caterpillar. Yeah. In terms of there's a stretch, but we don't want to stretch so far that we've left a whole lot of people back here, and that's where things snap, and that's where things go.
And that's where you've also had an ability over the years to. It's about doing like the right things at the right time. Eh?
Yeah.
There are seasons, and there's a right time to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And you've got to take advantage of that at that time,
because
it may not come up again.
Yeah.
Or may come up years later.
Well, everything has an expiry date.
Yeah, right.
Like the things in our fridge. It's like how many times do we put...
Avocados, man. I'm telling you now. Oh, my gosh. I eat half an avocado, and then the rest of it goes off.
Yeah, or we think, I'll put that in our fridge for leftovers. In a Tupperware container. We put it in there, and then
2 weeks later,
what's
that smell in the fridge?
Yeah, the leftovers are definitely left over. They're forgotten about. But everything has a expiry date, and I think we've got to do the right thing in the right season.
Yeah,
and I think that's really important, because I've found when I've delayed stuff, where I've put things off, it's often meant I've had to work harder in another season because I didn't do the right thing in the right time.
Maybe we should do another whole podcast on procrastination as well. There'll be another time.
Yeah, I'm sure that people don't procrastinate out
No,
there.
that wouldn't
Never.
be for our listeners. No, absolutely not.
So that's the first question is it inspirational? The second one is it sustainable? The third one is it relational? Because in the end, if it's not benefiting our relationships, number one, our relationship with God, but then our relationship with other people, is it really worthwhile? Because the richness of life is, let's face it, is the relationships we have. Absolutely. It's not the money we accumulate. It's not the titles. Yeah. They're short-lived. Yeah. They're not lasting. And if we're building according to the way God builds, He builds through revelation, He builds through relationships, and He builds through generations. And that's the three ways that I found God builds. And in the end, if it's not growing our relationships, where we're going to a deeper level in our relationship with God, but then that expressed through our love for one another, we've got to ask the question, is it really worth our investment?
That's a great point, though, because again, the challenge of this kingdom stuff, and even in business, whatever, there's goals. We talk about, like, ambition's not always a bad thing. Yeah. With the right filter, the right context. Yeah. Healthy ambition, kingdom ambition, that's a good thing. Yeah. But there's the tendency then to go, man, we've got to keep pushing. But that's why I like these filters, because if we do it, the opposite is we do this at the expense of relationship. Yeah. Right? Then we go, well, it's not worth it if we have to keep. So, yeah, how do we kind of navigate some of those things? How do we know how far to push? You talked about the rubber band thing. I mean, how have you known how far to stretch and when to pull back and when to...
Yeah, well, we want to be ambitious in our pursuit. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not going to be inspirational. Yeah. So we're going to be ambitious in our pursuit. But, ultimately, it's not just about us gaining. It's not for selfish gain. It's so that the people in our world, benefit from it. The saying goes, if all our prayers were answered, who would have benefit?
That's right.
A lot of our prayers are self-centered. Yeah. Would it actually change the world, or would it just benefit us? Yeah. And I think, we're here for kingdom purpose, and we're here so that we can make a difference in the lives of others. And that's the richness of life, knowing that, somehow God used you to have an effect on somebody else. And I think navigating through the season, there's a lot of complex issues out there. Yep, there's a lot of different political viewpoints on what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And the danger in any season is that we do long-term damage to relationship while we're navigating short-term issues.
Wow, okay.
And there's stuff that we've had to navigate that's, in 5 years' time probably won't even be on the radar. Wow. But I wonder how much relational damage we've done in the process of trying to solve an immediate issue.
Wow, that's a great thought. Yeah. How do you navigate even some of those things? People have opinions, right? And and not everybody's going to be 100% on board with everything you do. So how do you still live with integrity, knowing that actually relationally you've still got to look at a whole bunch of people across, across a global, even Equippers community? Yeah. How do you still navigate some of those things even internally?
Well, what we're going to focus on is on what unites us. Right. Great. And the gospel, the principles in the Word of God. And, there's political viewpoints out there that, in the end are opinions. And we've got to give people the freedom to actually have a different opinion to us. Right. Without breaking relationship. Right. But it's our values that unite us, and, they can be expressed differently. Yeah. But ultimately, it's the kingdom values that they're the glue that hold us together. Yeah, good. And that means that if we get offended, if somebody gets hurt, it's like, hey, let's work this out, let's work this through, but let's do it with grace, and let's do it, with God at the center of it. Because let's face it, without Jesus and without His grace, we're all stuffed.
There's not a lot of hope.
There's not a lot of hope. Things fracture and they don't often come back together. Yeah. But I love the fact that we've been reconciled to God, and He's entrusted you and I with the ministry of reconciliation, which I think is awesome. Yeah, that's great. So if anybody should be able to be able to bring two remote things together. It should be the church, it should be Christians, it should be disciples of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And
totally. It should be, yeah.
Yeah, that's. But it's when we've, sometimes use spiritual language to justify carnal desires.
Ooh, okay. Wow, there's another whole series on that one.
or our carnality.
Yeah.
And that's where things tend to go astray.
That's great.
And so, the other question, so the third one was relational. You remember them, these filters?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And all of our listeners were writing notes as well.
So the first one was just testing Jake here.
I did that. I remember. Is it inspirational?
Yeah.
Is it sustainable? Is it relational?
Yeah, which brings to the fourth one. Is it scalable?
Scalable.
Or transferable? And, I think sometimes we make things more complicated than they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And, we need to keep things simple. And simple is not, doesn't mean it's not deep. In fact, I love Jesus because he took deep things and he made them very simple.
Yeah.
He made he made it so simple that you and I could be able to understand it.
Yeah.
And we could access, a kingdom. And a lot of people sometimes like deep, but what
more deep teaching.
Yeah, what their deep is muddy.
Right.
And it's so deep that nobody knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I love Jesus because he always had action points.
Yeah, true.
And I think, one thing we've got to ask ourselves is, can other people take hold of what we've got and run with it? Because we've got to make ministry accessible. And so often people look at heroes and superstars and they think, oh, they're amazing, I could never do that. But I love Jesus because he made ministry. He put ministry in the hands of fishermen, in the hands of ordinary people.
Teenage fishermen too.
Yeah. And if we're really to see a move of God that's sustainable, that's relational, we need to put that ministry in the hands of every believer.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that, making it accessible. And it's because people do have to understand it, and they've got to be able to, it's that whole Habakkuk to write the vision down, make it plain so that people can run with it. They've got to be able to run with it. And we've got to make it simple and plain. And I think the phrase, we both heard that phrase many years ago. Now we've got to point the way, clear the path for people. Make it, and it's so simple, isn't it? This is where we're going, and we'll try and remove every obstacle we can for people. Even in our small group leaders, we give them a really clear, simple model to go, just do that. It almost takes the pressure off people when you can give them something simple to understand.
Yeah, so it's got to have that level of aspiration and inspiration, but not so much that it's like, oh man, I never could.
I don't get it. Yeah, I don't understand it. And
I don't get it. It's too far beyond me. It's like, how are we leading people? I think the question is, how are we leading people to take the next step from wherever they are? Is there an action point to this, or does it just apply to those who have been around for 20 years and read the whole Bible?
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah,
and it makes every person feel like, everybody wants to feel like they can play a part in this vision. They can play a part, that their difference that they can make actually matters to the overall. Yeah, which I think the scalability is brilliant for that.
Yeah, which sadly ministry's been put in the hands of two or three, and then everybody's expected to get on board with their ministry. But the New Testament church is every believer's a minister.
Yeah.
And ministry isn't just confined to a platform or stage. Ministry's outworked in every sphere and in every place or space that people find themselves.
Cool. So inspirational, sustainable, relational, scalable.
Yeah, and the last one here fifth one, where the last one is it transformational?
Right.
Yeah, does it lead to transformation? Right. Because ultimately, what do we want to see? We want to see His kingdom come, His will be done on earth as it is in heaven, and on earth as it is in heaven. And it's like, are we changing the culture? Or are we just adding another program, or are we really bringing heaven to earth? Is a question we've got to ask ourselves, because that's our commission.
Yeah.
And that's our role, is to bring the culture of the kingdom to earth, and for it to be expressed in our daily lives. And is it changing people's lives?
That's a great filter, though, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
ultimately, if you don't have that as a filter, what's the point in anything that we do if it's not changing lives? If it's not transformation, I mean, the essence of the gospel is transformation.
Yeah.
It's transforming the nature of a human heart from one to another. It's all things becoming new. And so I guess it's a great filter.
Yeah, well, we don't want to just grow a number, be a large church in a city where the abuse statistics are going through the roof, youth suicides are, well, we want to make a difference in all those areas, not just have a big Christian celebration on a Sunday.
Yeah, great.
In fact, the meeting place is just, as John Wimber said, the training place for the marketplace, and it's so that we can see change in every sector of society, and we can see some of the statistics that, just rock our worlds and go, how's that happening right now in our city and our community? We want to see those reversed and changed, and we want to see the kingdom of God established in those areas.
Great. That's great, Sam. Lots of takeaways, lots of great leadership filters, and that's us until next time. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks for listening to Off Script with Sam Monk. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure you pass it on. We love your feedback, so drop us a line about what topics you'd like to hear about on Off Script with Sam Monk.